For those of you who don't know, my name is Joelle Monique. I'm a film critic and podcast host. And I've started this podcast. It's called Getting Out. You guys are all at the first episode, which I'm really excited about. I've got some of this super amazing panel for you guys because I want to start talking about the ways in which our history enriches us and the ways in which we continue to repeat it. As I've been reading a lot of Ida B. Wells documents lately, and a lot of her struggles tend to be our struggles, which is confusing to me. We should not be repeating these things. I don't think it's on us as a community, but I do think we can look for solutions. And I think that by starting in entertainment, where we are visible, where our talents are often being exploited, we can maybe hopefully get to the root of much larger systemic problems here in America. So I just want to start by introducing, look at this gorgeous panel. Oh my gosh, guys, I'm so excited. Jeff Thorne, all the way down to my left. Give it up for Jeff. The Black Panther Quest, The Librarians, Law and Order Criminal Intent, Leverage, Mosaic, and he's making a new Spider-Man character. George Stacy, Gwen Stacy's dad, will have spider powers in the next month. Yes, that part. You guys already know. It's wild. Everyone now has spider powers, and I feel like we're going to start with end of George Stacy. You're going to be making a statement, so I'm excited to see that.
It's a cop with spider powers.
Is it essentially Batman?
Yeah, I mean, he's, what do you call it? He doesn't have any of the genius that Peter Parker has. So what would you be like if you suddenly had these powers, access to police utensils and little elves?
But also, you were not a teenager. This is
and you're not a teenager, and you got a 12-year-old daughter. That 12-year-old daughter you raised by yourself. So,
yes,
you know.
super thrilled.
Go George. Go George.
Next up, we've got Shannon M. Houston. Look, Shannon's going to be on one of my most anticipated shows for next year, Lovecraft, which has Misha Green in it. I didn't tell Shannon yet, but Misha Green's like my hero. I tweet her all the time. She's like, that's so lovely you exist, and it makes me feel bubbly all over. She's also doing Homecoming, which comes out next week on Amazon. Little Fires Everywhere. Looming Tower, episode 5. Guys, I love Looming Tower, and I think you guys should check it out. And she's also former editor at Pace Magazine, which is so dope. She has all the knowledge. Thank you for being here, Shannon.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. Marc Bernardin.
Hi.
Does Batman on Batman. And it was my introduction. I never told Marc this. It was the first nerd show I watched when I got out here 5 years ago, and I was obsessively watching. I'm like, God, that Marc is so good. He knows all of the things. And I mentioned, I was like, oh my God, what is happening?
He doesn't know any of the things.
Yeah.
It's all lies.
So many things. This guy can write a story in 5 seconds. It's crazy. But also, he did Castle Rock, which was stunning if you guys are into Stephen King and Hulu. And also from writer in LA Times, the movie section, and stuff on Ben 10, which, you know, is glorious. So give it up for Marc. And finally, but definitely not least, Akela Cooper. Akela. I'm so sorry, Akela. Akela Cooper, the producer on Luke Cage, which is East End, 100, A Veterans Assemble, and this is an American Horror Story? Yep. Girl. I'm not going to get into spoilers in American Horror Story, but just know I'm watching it religiously. Get over Akela, yeah. Awesome. So I wanted to start by asking you guys a question that was not on the list of questions I sent to you. Because it's a little bit of a curveball just to start off the conversation. And what I wanted to ask you guys is about your getting out moment. I feel like every Black creative has this moment where they thought about leaving, specifically because, or perhaps because of either gender or race or economic situations where it's challenging, and just why did you stay anyway?
I did leave. I was on a show called Alphas back in 2011, and it was the first season of Alphas, and I moved out here for it, and then did not go back for the second season of Alphas for a plethora of reasons. And I went back to journalism. I needed to work. I needed a job. I had a family to feed. I left Hollywood. I went back to New Jersey and went back to work. And not giving up per se. I was always writing. I was always working. But the realities of life meant that the dream had to take us a little pause in order for me to actually put shoes on babies' feet and food in babies' mouths. And that's sometimes the price of the dream. It gets deferred for a little longer than you want it to.
also quit. I was an actor for a million years. I was doing really well at it. And I looked up one day and realized they were either going to be playing gangsters or cops for the rest of my life. And I was like, I'm not having that. I want to be shooting some phasers and jumping on some vampires. This was well pre-Blade, anybody thinking about any of that stuff. And everyone was looking at me like I was crazy. And I just quit cold turkey, a pretty good career. And I lived in crap for a while. And writing was the thing, and I wrote my way out, literally. I wrote my way back into whatever all this is. And I don't look back. I don't seek to get out anymore. So get out of my way.
Yes.
So, yeah, that's me.
I don't know if this is the right answer, but the moment that I thought of was at the end of the Lovecraft Country Writers Room. It was actually the last day, and I was going home in my Uber, and I was a little bit drunk, and I started crying, like really bad. And I was crying because I was like, I never want to not do something like this. I don't want to write on a show that doesn't challenge me this much. I don't want to write about things that don't make me as uncomfortable as I was. I mean, the whole writer's room, I was like fighting a lot of different things, and I think I was challenged in a lot of ways, and I had never experienced that. It was my third writer's room at that time, and so I think for me that experience was like, I don't ever want to not do something this incredible.
You set a new standard for yourself.
Yeah, and I would say Misha set the standard for me because I didn't really want that standard at the time. You know, I just wanted to be a writer and make the money.
Right.
And now it's like, oh, I'm here, and the money is here, and I'm a TV writer, but there's a million different shows you can write on, and it's like, I don't ever want to leave this space. I don't want to ever not be in a space like this again. And I'm on a show that's very much not that show, but I'm still in that, like, that energy of, I have to keep pushing myself. We have such an amazing opportunity. I don't want to just make a show that's good. I don't want to just write on a show that's good when we are seeing that there are TV shows, there are movies that can change the world. So I think that was a little bit of that moment for me.
I have not actually had my get out moment, and I don't know if it's like stubbornness or stupidity or a mix of both, but like I wanted to do this, and once I started doing this, it was like, okay, so this show that I'm on sucks, but someday I will have my own show, and then I will call the shots, and that is the light at the end of the tunnel, and I'm going to keep working until I reach that point. And I put up with a lot of shit, but now I am in a position where I don't have to put up with a lot of shit. It's wonderful.
I really love all of these stories of strength and determination and willpower. I think leaving is my biggest fear because I just don't know how I would get back. Getting here was so hard, and so the idea of like, I'm gonna leave, but like keeping my strength and keep writing and try again, is harrowing. And Marc, I wanted to ask you, do you think, like, you mentioned kids in your family as the specific reason, you have to feed your babies. Do you think you would have stayed and dug in your heels had you not yet had your family? And do you think it would have made a difference in your career? Do you think you're better for having left?
Would I have been better off if I didn't have a family trying to do this job? I would have been here earlier if I didn't have kids. Like I didn't move to Los Angeles till I was 41 years old, I think. That checks out. I'm great at math. And one of the big reasons for that delay was because of kids and schools and navigating all of that shit. I'm sorry, can I curse on your face?
Please curse. I love the swearing.
Wow.
Yes, so much fun. Yes, just get it out.
That's good news for me.
Yeah,
I don't want to follow my Twitter.
No censorship here necessary.
Yeah, but the place that I'm in right now, I would not be in had I not had a family.
Mm-hmm.
Just mentally, in the work that I do, and in the sort of things that have unlocked for me in the last 5 years or so, is entirely because of conversations that I had with my kids, of looking at the world as it's been unfolding in both amazing and awful and wonderful and ungodly ways. Because when you're like 24 years old, your world is like this big, right? Like it's just kind of you, it's a couple of friends you have, and it's that first job you get, and you get to like your 30s, and you begin to be aware of the way things work, and then you have a family, and well, maybe not, but the work gets bigger for you. The older you get, the bigger the world gets. And the expansion of my world happened in my 40s in a real way, and my work changed because I wanted to just be a guy who wrote about car chases and explosions and robot takeovers because those are all awesome. But as I began to incorporate both who I was in the work and the way the world is shifting in the work, it started changing the way people responded to the work. Like it got better. And I think had it not been for the sort of development of me, along with my family, and along with all of the shit that a person does as they just get older and walk through the world more, I feel like I'm a different person than I was, and would have been if I had just done this at 23 years old.
Jeff,
Yes, ma'am.
talk about coming back. And what's that like? Like, I mean, you went through the circuit as an actor, you knew the business and people here.
Well, I kind of napalmed everything, so I didn't
You
have
burned a lot of bridges leaving?
Bridges, what do you mean? I burned the country down. I killed all the helpful nuns that were trying to get me across the border. I also killed them. I really didn't want anything to do with any of that crap, and it took me a little while. My break back in was prose writing. I tried for a couple of minutes to be a screenwriter. I couldn't get arrested, as they used to say. I might have told you the crazy antics that I went through to get my first scripts across. In a very short, prior to all of you who are now very internet savvy, I was on the internet quite a while before it became a thing. So I bought a burner cell phone, created a fake web page, called myself my own manager.
Yes.
Made up a man named Michael Green who had a completely different accent to myself.
Was he Jamaican?
He was Jewish.
Oh my God.
That'll do it. Jamaican's not going to help in Hollywood.
And I taught myself, and there used to be this book, the Players Directory or whatever. It was literally a listing of every production company in town and their phone numbers. And I called literally every single one that I thought would take my scripts, which was over 1,000 people. And I got my scripts across those doors. I pretended to be a UPS guy. I got the uniform, I got the clipboard. I snuck onto lots. It was a hell of a lot easier back then. I would meet people who I had literally handed off scripts to them or their assistant 2 or 3 days previous, completely blank. You could walk through a studio and murder everyone dressed like a UPS delivery person. And none of it really worked. It worked up to the meeting phase. I would get a couple of meetings, but I couldn't close for whatever reason. And this stuff costs money to live in this town. So my wife was like, I'm looking at my watch, man. And
Time is up.
yeah, so I started trying to sell prose stories, and I was lucky enough to sell to a couple of magazines. And then Hollywood suddenly described me as a real writer for some reason. I'm like, that netted me like $1,200, that one little story in that obscure magazine, and now I'm real. But last week, the exact same script now that you're pouring over, you wouldn't look at. I was kind of in the go fuck yourself mode when I came back in, which actually helped, because being able to say no and mean it gives you the power in any interview. And I didn't realize it at the time, but that helped me a lot. So that's what it's like. Not good.
Shannon, when you made this new boundary for yourself, it just happened for you. So I guess what are you implementing to try to get back to that?
I think it's a question of like when you're in a writer's room, you can follow the showrunner's lead, you can follow the lead of the people in the room, and you have to do that because that's your boss and that's the vibe of the room. But I think for me, I push myself a little more now. Like I'm okay with saying, I know that this is the vision for the show, but what if we did this? What if we did this that's completely different from the vision that you have? And we're gonna talk about it for 2 hours and then probably not do it because the studio is gonna say, I'm okay with causing divergences in the room, I guess. And I hope that doesn't sound like a bad thing, but I just mean
That was
like,
the most polite way you could have said that. I'm okay with some divergence in the room. It's okay.
so I think it's coming into the room with that kind of energy. But I do think also going forward, whatever options I might have, I feel like I'm going to ask myself, like, what ultimately is this show going to do? As opposed to just like, is it cool? Is it interesting? But like, what can it do? What is the potential? And am I working for somebody who's going to also push themselves? Because if it's not my show, I can only do so much. So I think, again, just coming in with that same energy of keep pushing yourself. They say that it's a drama and it's Reese Witherspoon and Kerry Washington, and yeah, it can be that, but is there anything else it can be? Can it be a little stranger than that, than what we expect it to be, those kind of things?
What can Lovecraft do? I'm sorry, I'm very excited about this show.
I can't tell you anything.
Right. A little bit.
Talk about it.
Just a little, dang it, okay.
I mean, the book is out. The book is yes. So it's that and 1,000 other things that aren't in the book.
Okay.
And it's going to be amazing.
Okay, I'm
Are
gonna
there
be patient.
robots?
The book is out.
She knows what's up.
Book, and there was a point when I was even coming home and I was telling my boyfriend like everything we talked about in the room, and then it was like by day 10 I was like, I can't tell you anything else. Not because I was afraid he would like share it, but just because I was like, it's so fucking good. I need you to wait to see it on the screen.
Listen, that's all I need to hear.
That's pretty awesome.
All I need.
And also there are robots now, so awesome.
I never confirmed or denied the existence of robots.
I can't wait for the robot scene myself. The robot scene sounds like that seems like the thing you really want to see.
Because they gotta be black robots, right? So they're robots. If there's not robots, then I got a new show.
Robots?
Don't laugh. That will actually happen now, and it's your fault.
Why did they put those on robots?
Look, a robot Cthulhu? I'm here for it.
Is it really a show that isn't enhanced by robots? That's all I'm going to say.
The General Hospital had robots, and it was awesome.
Wow, you reached for that.
Okay, so talk to me. You said during your journey you were just like, no, I've made this decision to be here, but certainly there must have been pits or like just really hard mountain climbs.
Yes.
Can you give us some, I guess specifically about, I know a lot of people in the infancy of their career, or maybe in the toddler phase, where they're like, I've got some ground underneath me, a couple people who matter like know my name, and I know I can do the work. Gosh, like just trying to make a living off of it can be hell.
Yes.
How do you survive? How do you endure the hard times?
Oh, how do I do the hard time? Like
Yes.
unemployment, or just like I don't want to fucking go to work? I don't want to go to work. It's like I am from a small town in Missouri. Like,
Right.
I grew up in a very small town, and like when I came here and became a staff writer, like the first time I saw my check, like even though it was WGA minimum for staff writers, was more money than like my mom had been making as a school teacher in Missouri. So that right there is like, whenever I would feel down, it's like, all right, I am going to log onto my bank account. And then if this week's check hasn't come in, it's like, I'm going to add that. It's like, and I also like, I have things that I would like to do eventually with that money. And so it's just like, again, these are the goals that I have. I'm going to push through and know that like there is something I'm going to reward myself with on the other side. But yes, when there were days where it's like, I'm going to choke every motherfucker in the trial room, I would go to my office and just be like, yeah, I am making good money. I am not in Missouri working at Walmart. Like, sorry to people who are working at Walmart, that was not my dream. Like, I was actually one of the few people who made it out of my town. So that's also like.
I am also a small town Midwestern girl, so I understand. I'm gonna coin that as a self stunt. When you stunt on yourself to remind you of where you're going, I really appreciate that. I wanted to talk a little bit about your mentors, specifically to ask if you guys had any LACC mentors in the industry. And if you did, can we shout them out and say a thank you? And if you didn't, are you trying to mentor? Is there space for Black people to mentor? Why did you think you didn't have a mentor?
I did have a mentor, the wonderful Charles Murray.
Yes, Charles Murray, give it up.
Worked together on our first show, V, and I met him. I was in the CBS Writers Workshop, and that was where I first met him. And within that workshop, one of the pieces of advice they gave to young staff writers is like, when you're on a show, find an upper level writer that you can trust, who you can like ask stupid questions about or get advice from. And so the day that I found out Charles was also staffed on V, and that was my first show as a staff writer, I hit him up. I'm like, hey, guess what? You're my mentor now. And he's like,
Choose you.
yeah, and if you know Charles, he's like, the fuck I am. And it's like, yeah, no, who are you?
That's something he's not doing.
That is our relationship. So I was like, no. And he did. He took me under his wing. He's going to cringe when he hears this, but he took me under his wing and he guided me through the minefields. Like, it was good to have him because like, even when we weren't working, I could text him and be like, hey, this is what I'm going through right now. How would you handle this? Which is not the way any human being should handle a situation, but you know, just like, he would also give me like, here's how you handle this, because Charles is like Geoffrey times 10.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, he has a negative amount of flux to give.
Yeah. Yeah.
He will walk away from any situation at a drop of a hat.
Still
He
have
just
a
does not
fit
put up
veneer
with
of
bullshit, and I
politeness.
love for it. Awesome. But he also is like, he's been working, so he also gets away with it in a way that like, you're not used to black people getting away.
Right, I was gonna say, this sounds mesmerizing.
Yeah, he's a unicorn in this industry.
Well, he's damn good. That
Yes, he
probably
is.
helps.
Very incredibly talented writer and just like a great human being, like when you get to know him. But I did have him, and to this day, he and I, like, we worked on Luke Cage together. Again, that was a nice come around. We actually got to write an episode together, season 1, and I have taken what he has taught me, and I am mentoring young black writers. Now, one of them was also on Luke Cage, and he referred to me as like mom, and in one
Family.
referred to Charles as grandpa, and Charles, again, me and Charles was like, what the fuck is going on? So yes, I am paying it forward.
Awesome. Mark?
I did not and do not really have any black mentors, but it's weird because there are people like Derek Hughes, who is both a peer and a mentor at the same time.
Okay.
And you know, he was on Warehouse 13 at the same time I was on Alphas, and so we were both in kind of the sci-fi world, and we were both at about the same level. And then I dropped out and he blew up. But he's always been for me, the stream through which every Hollywood path crosses, because Derek knows everybody. Everybody knows Derek. Derek gets an invite to every party you've ever wanted to be at. Derek is always like, I'm at Tracy Tell's birthday party.
I don't even know the president. I don't even know the president.
But he's also been one of my like first readers for stuff. Like I'll send him pilots and I'll send him specs and say, hey man, what do you think? How can I make this better? He'll do the same for me. And so it's more like we're both trying to help each other out in a way. We're trying to help each other be better. Both being sounding boards for each other when shit gets weird in a room, because it invariably does. And so it's not a sort of mentor-mentee relationship. It's more like, hey, we are in this thing together, and there are so many of us. And so why would we not cleave to each other in times of distress?
I love that. Shannon,
I think I have a similar vibe with the people that I've worked with, where I wouldn't call anybody a mentor, but I feel like, you know, like coming out of the Lovecraft room, we had Misha Green as the showrunner, Sonia Winton and J Kid were the co-EPs. So all my bosses were black, and I felt like everybody had an open door policy with me in terms of like any questions I had, but also like everybody has a million Hollywood stories and writer's room stories and things that were really helpful. So like I said, I wouldn't say mentor, mentee, but I've always felt like that sense of I'm definitely not in this by myself. I'm definitely not the first person to do it, not the first black woman here. So being able to get help when I need it, you know, I found people who I'm like comfortable talking to about money. That's when I know like I'm in a good space with somebody. When I'm like, wait, how do you write this off on your taxes? Those kind of things. So, and at least in my experience, and I haven't been here that long, but most, if not all, of the black people that I've come into contact with have basically said, like, it's again, open door, like, what do you need? What questions do you have? Those kind of things. And so I do find myself now, not that I'm quite high up enough to do that, but just, you know, wanting to have that same energy with other young black writers, either coming in or just still trying to, like, you know, navigate and make their way here.
Jeff?
I hate to break the bubble, but black people were actively hostile to me when I first started writing. I have plenty of peers like Marc and Akela, and now Shannon, I presume, who are people I trust and whose work I like, and they look at my stuff, and it's all sort of all to the good. We're all in this together. It's very much the vibe now. But when I started, I was basically one of maybe 5 guys that was writing science fiction and fantasy, and would show up black. So people would read my scripts, and I'd come in, and the white people, about half of them, would do that dog head tilt Like, but you spell your name like British people do, and there's elves in your script. I didn't understand. Could it be more urban? And like it takes place in a city, therefore it is urban. But with black people, it was the opposite end of that same mirror, which was, why are you not writing things that LL Cool J can star in? Why are you not writing the story of Rosa Parks? And I'm like, those are not the stories that come out of my head. The stories that come out of my head involve Galactus. I'm sorry, you know. Until Dwayne McDuffie, who I considered more of a peer, but partly a mentor in that he was a couple of years older than me and was going through some of the doors already that I wanted to go through. I was at the time a bit more hot-headed. He was way more reasonable overall than I am as a human being. And I punch things, and he's like, let's shake hands instead. So occasionally, a little bit of advice here and there about how to deal with a particular individual, but he also gave me my first job in animation, which allowed me to have a second career to fall back on when things got slow. As a live action writer, I could always pick up some animation jobs. And that led to me being the showrunner on the Black Panther cartoon, which I considered a hobby activity, writing cartoons, and they absolutely did not. So,
R.I.P. to Dwayne, who's, you know, iconic and legendary to every black kid who just wanted to read a comic and see themselves, and it's cool to hear that he was supporting and
he was more than supporting. He was. I wish he was still here. He was everything.
He's awesome, dude. I want to ask you, what do you think changed during that time? You know, why are black writers, black community able to rally around you now where they did before?
The internet. The internet. I think as every subgroup was able to find other people like themselves, I was not the only person like myself. I didn't come from a small town. I came from DC, so there are probably a few more black geeks, I guess, but still not enough to be the norm. But once the internet showed up, you realize it doesn't matter. You don't have to be physically in physical proximity to anyone. You can have whatever your bent is. You could like specifically Dragon Ball Z and nothing else. And there's a shitload of black or Asian or female or any combination of queer you want to throw in. There's a group. There's not just one or two. This is worldwide, literally. So you're not alone anymore.
I tell people all the time I owe my entire career to the internet, first gig to my very last gig, all because the internet exists, and honestly, mostly Twitter, job postings, and connecting with the right people. And yeah, the internet is a beautiful place. It has given us a lot. To veer off of
It
this,
makes it almost worth it.
Almost. Just almost. Only almost.
So everybody here has worked in genre, specifically horror and fantasy in some element. And if we look at the current kind of zeitgeist of what's coming out of black film, we're getting A Wrinkle in Time and Black Panther and Get Out, Sorry to Bother You, which seems to be kind of a trend where black writers and directors can be successful. What are the elements of horror and fantasy specifically that speak to the Black American experience? And why do you think we have trouble launching products in other genres? Like maybe, I don't see like a lot of historical black fiction that doesn't, and I love like historical fiction. I'm a big nerd for a corset or like Log Cabin House, like just anything placed back in time. And I wanted to get you guys some thoughts on that.
Well, to the last question, like why we aren't across like just like in historical fiction, there seems to be like this belief that like we did not exist until slavery. It's crazy. Like white people, especially, are shocked because like Shakespeare wrote about Moors. It's like those are black people. They existed in medieval and Victorian, Edwardian England. Like they were there.
Some of them were kings and queens.
Yeah, it's stunning. It's been completely, almost literally whitewashed out of history. So we have to someone who is interested in that because I would watch it. I watched the hell out of Belle. I don't know if I could ever write anything about that didn't involve demons. But like the people in the black community who are interested in that need to break through and like write those scripts and create those shows and like get it out there. It's like we have to like break the seal. It's like, yes, we were a part of history, not as slaves.
Dude, I feel like somebody has to be pitching and
But
writing
they are.
these things.
I mean,
Just not
people
getting
are
picked up.
writing these scripts. It's a question of
Who's
when
gonna
white
do it?
people decide, okay, we'll give you the money to make it. Or
Yes.
it's a question of like, well, which, you know, if Belle had made $1 million, then they'd be like, fuck, we need more movies like this. Do you know what I'm saying? I fucking love Belle. It's a great movie.
Which at one point I think like Carrie Fukunaga was going to do The Black Count, which like I got really fucking excited about.
Yeah, buddy.
Where is that movie? Because that was like 5 years ago.
Right. But I feel like it's like we have, you know, Black Panther, after a movie in a particular genre that a black person made makes $1 billion, then they're like, oh, black people can make things like that? Like, wow, that's so cool. Let's give them more money to do things like that. So until we have like a movie like that crosses that thing and becomes on the radar and wins several awards, and until that point, it's not going to be a thing. Because yes, I do think people are writing those stories and people are like writing about those periods of time, but until the gatekeepers decide that they really believe we're capable of doing it, aka we've made money doing it, it's not going to happen. So I just think that that's really the issue, not that we don't, in the same way there have always been black nerds and there have always been black people interested in all these kinds of things, until like some of the people writing the checks want to pay you to make it, it's not going to happen.
And to that, it's like we also need to be the people who are writing the checks, like with what Jordan Peele is doing right now with his own company. It's like, but again, that's horror and sci-fi. It's like someone needs to have the Bell that makes like $50 million or $100 million, and then that like Ava DuVernay should like have her own company is also doing all of that. There should be another person who's doing that. Like they have the production power that they can walk through the door and it's like, hey, I had the script, I want to do it. And it's like, yeah, let's do it. We need to be gatekeepers more.
Definitely. I wanted to ask you this too, with a lot of like, you know, young people coming up with the advent of the internet and being able to, you know, share their stories and stuff, what are some like either pitfalls or, I guess, I feel like there are a bunch of traps waiting out there for young black people entering the entertainment field. I know one of the big ones we've been talking on the internet a lot about lately is like get paid for your work, which seems very obvious, but some of us are just so hungry to work and get started, and anything that has an outlet and a space for us to be seen, you know, that seems like a grand opportunity that we want to jump on. So are there any other pitfalls or things that, you know, you encourage young artists to avoid?
Read contracts.
Yeah.
Actually read them.
And
if they're unfair, put a red line through everything that's unfair. The internet is an interesting tool because the means of making these things has dropped down to the point where I can literally walk out with what's in my bag and make a movie. I can take my cell phone, I have editing software, I can even write the script literally all on my freaking phone. So there's really no excuse not to do it if that's what you want to do. And that technically is free work. That's the advertisement of yourself as, you know, I can do this, I can do these 5 things, I could be in it, I could direct it, I can write and produce all of those things. You could be amazing at all of those things. But the person who comes knocking is going to be trying to leverage you as hard as they can to get the most out of you for the least from them. That's everyone you meet. Everyone you meet, no matter how sexy, no matter how smiley, no matter what great dinner they take you to, even if they bring you a freaking Tesla and give it to you for free, apparently for free, was apparently. If they go that far out at the front, it's because they're expecting something huge at the back. And if you don't recognize that that's the paradigm every single time, you're going to get burned in a way that's going to hurt your feelings deeply. So I would say be frosty is the thing. You love the creation engine is joyful, and in the midst of it, you're joyful. But the second it turns into a selling thing, you better be a person in a marketplace, because the market is not sweet. It's not evil. Some of them are evil. Some of the people are evil. But the marketplace is just the marketplace. It's indifferent to you. So assume that indifference and move forward like that. Oh, I'm beautiful, I made my beautiful thing, my rainbow is going to shine over everything. That's some hippie bullshit. Do not do that. You'll hurt yourself.
I think as Jeff also said before, remember and gather unto you the power of no.
Yep.
Because the thing that you have, even at the beginning, is this is your thing. And you get to set the terms. And if, sure, they will offer you a shitty deal at first, and your deals will get better over time. But when you're starting, realize that there should be a line past which you're not willing to go. There are things you're not willing to give. And the last full measure of devotion to your own creativity is no. Is I don't want to do that. I'm not willing to do this for that. I'm not willing to do it for free. I'm not willing to do it whatever bullshit they're throwing at you. You can still say no. You can always say no until they give you enough money that saying no doesn't hurt and saying yes is just fine.
Yep.
I'm glad you brought up the, people working for free. I feel like coming out of the world of freelancers, that was a big thing. This is a huge issue. I feel like along those lines, there's this myth of, you pay your dues, like a really good internship gives you X amount of exposure. Like, that's a myth. It's not. Yes, there are examples of where it's useful, but I feel like a lot of the myth is that this is the only way to do it. You have to work for free. You have to be disrespected. Like, I feel like that's a huge thing with Hollywood. Like, part of it is just like sitting in a room and like listening to people say really fucked up things, and there's no way out of it. That's just the business. So, to me, another important myth to combat is the myth of like that what we do requires genius or requires you've got to know somebody to get in, as opposed to like this idea that I'm starting to feel when I'm in rooms of like, people have a million different ways of getting into the business. There are people who, they start at a million different angles. There are people who come from the world of journalism. There are people who knew somebody who knew somebody. There are people who are getting in because of nepotism, because of money, whatever. But because of that, like, there's space for everybody and everybody's ideas. And when I say there's space for everybody, you know what I mean. Like, they're not really making space for everybody. But the people that I come into contact with who are like, I want to write, I want to do this, it's like, you don't have to be the greatest fucking writer in the world. We all know this. You don't have to be the most talented person in the world. You don't have to have the perfect idea, but having kernels and having bits and pieces of these things. I was very surprised when I got hired for Lovecraft, because like, I've never worked in sci-fi, I've never written things like that, but I had enough of a background and I'd read it, like, you just don't know. So to me, there's something really important about letting people know. In a way, it's not as hard as you think.
That was a really
It's just that hard. That's what it really is.
Like that.
I mean, tell you, there are like she said, there's like 1,000 ways in,
Yeah.
but I think all of them boil down to a certain degree to people recognizing that you're a serious person and that you have something serious to offer. And however you manage to make that case is how that works.
Right.
Part of the upside of the internet is that it gives you a lot of visibility if you do it well. Part of the downside is that, we all like to make dumb fucking jokes on the internet. And occasionally the coming across as a serious person is at odds with internet personas. But, like, I broke in because I had, I didn't have a fellowship, I didn't go to a diversity program, I don't have a degree in film from USC or UCLA, I don't have an MF anything, but I had 25 years as a journalist. And so that was he's a serious person who has done writing before, who knows how to operate in a room, who has spoken to adults about things in real life. And so that helps to bridge the gap. I mean, if there's somebody who's a cop for 20 years and wants to work in procedurals, that's what makes them a serious person. It's figuring out how you can deploy the life you've had before into the life you want it to be, so that it gives you a sense of gravity that helps draw things to you.
So then, is there no wrong way to enter the industry? Because I also started, I came out here with I was a writer's assistant, I was a director's personal assistant, I worked as a PA, and I was not getting anywhere. And for what Shannon was saying earlier about bad behavior and, demanding you stay late, but don't put down those hours that you work because we can't afford that, but you can't leave because we will fire you. Those kinds of attitudes, the sexual harassment, I used to go on and on all the things that I was just like, I can't do this, and I don't see myself, being able to endure this much longer. But when I went into journalism, a lot of people said, oh, well, it's going to be hard for you to be taken seriously as a writer because everyone's going to be wondering if you just want that scoop, and, if you give someone a bad critique, that's going to hurt your ability to work with them in the future, and things like that. And then also that perhaps, journalists moving into writing somehow devalues the writing because they've been working on both sides. I always thought it this is like the French New Wave style of making, you critique the movie and then you go make a movie, and then your friends critique it and they go make a movie. What do you guys think? Is there a wrong way? Is there a way somebody made it in, and we don't have to say names, where you were like, I don't understand why you're in this room?
Well, I'm not a big fan of nepotism, but it works. I'm not a big fan of cronyism, but it works. The real rule of the arts world is if it works for you, then it's fine. I mean, I wish that I could say that there were rules. I wish that I could say there's some sort of moral authority over all of it. I try to be a moral person in the world. I'm not leaving a wake of dead bodies behind me. Personally, me.
You're willing to.
But
Yes.
And you half an hour ago was like, I left a bus of dead nuns.
Everyone was dead.
You
That's
did mention
different.
it.
That's different. And those nuns deserved it, by the way. Fuck them. But what I mean is that it's a harsh game. There's a lot of money on the table, and that's going to attract a certain kind of player. My feeling is you either have to be durable or you have to be lethal. I'm not lethal, but I'm fucking durable. There is no wrong way in, because every door that gets open and one of us sneaks through gets slammed and welded shut after we get through. So every time one of us tells you a story of how I broke in, that's it. No one else is telling that story. You will never hear anyone duplicate anyone's break-in story, because once you broke in, that was it. That window got sealed and bricked up, okay?
Unless you're white.
Unless you are,
Yes.
yeah, and that's
In this
another
case, my dad
That's
worked
it.
for that thing, who did that thing, and he made a call, and I got a job.
And the other thing is the obvious, the things that are obvious, like I'm going to get in this particular track, I'm going to be an assistant track, I'm going to be in a PA track. Those work, but they're also nakedly, there's like a big sign, here's the track, come on through here and you might get somewhere. So everyone's applying for that job. So it's the same basic level of competition with less dividend. So in fact, everyone's more desperate, more aggressive, more everything than they are at the upper level where the money is clearly there and you're making money. It's fierce, but it's nowhere near as gut you on your way out of the house as it is at the PA level. I promise you. It's brutal down there. So my feeling is there's no wrong way. There are immoral and amoral and moral ways, but none of them are wrong because all of them have worked for someone. It's just whatever you can take. What can your soul take?
Yeah, I agree that there's no wrong way, and also that, you know, like people will ask me, what happened with you, what's your story, how did it happen, and it's like, it's such a very particular story. It's not happening like that for you, but I can give you a general idea of like things that I did, but something that you said earlier I wanted to get back to, this question of seriousness, because to me that's a big part of it, but it's really, to me, it's really taking yourself seriously enough, and that's kind of what I was trying to get at. Like, it's not necessarily about, yes, it can be about who you know and all those things and are you on the right track, but it's like really valuing what you can bring to the table, knowing that you can't bring it all, but you have something that's valuable, which then leads to being able to say no and being able to walk away and come back if you need to.
Okay, I wanted to ask the table about, we just talked about like, you know, about what you can endure and what your lines are. And while it's really great working in the entertainment industry, and sometimes you're like, oh my God, parties and food and cool people, it can also be exhausting, and I think that the industry isn't always attuned to making sure everybody's taking care of themselves personally. And I wanted to ask you guys a little bit about what you're doing, you know, personally, or how do you really, not just give you the hard days, but like how do you guys make sure that you have enough fuel and energy, especially when you're juggling, you know, multiple jobs at one time, or multiple writing assignments, because you've got to be pitching something and then finishing something else and then editing that third project, and then you start having that inkling of a new idea in the back of your head. How do you keep yourself in balance during all of that?
I set boundaries for myself. Like usually it's like I'm a writer, like my job is writing. So I try to like from Monday at a certain point, like let's just say 9 to 5, to Friday 9 to 5. That is my job. Whether I'm working on the show and then when I come home I'm doing my stuff. Like Monday through Friday, I write. Unless I absolutely have to, I try to keep the weekends open for fun things like hanging out with my friends, going to horror movies. I have a favorite spa that I go to where occasionally it's like, I know I need a massage because I've been hunched over on computer for a fucking day, and I have my masseuse like, you know what to do, and he's like, yep. And so I try to make sure I have time on the weekends for myself. And also like during the week, if I am working on a job, I do have something that's like, okay, I gotta sit and watch HGTV until I fall asleep, or what am I passionate about writing right now? And then I will work on that thing little by little, something that I'm a workaholic and I'll admit to that. And so this is like, this year I've just been pulling myself back from constantly working, and I've learned to pace myself on my own personal writing where I'm not like writing until 3 a.m. and then going to bed and getting up at 6. Like, it's a new thing for me because I'm constantly like, I'm going to do 10 pages today and I'm going to do 12 pages tomorrow. So it's like, no, I'm going to take my time and this will get done when it gets done. Like for personal stuff.
Okay.
But yeah, that's how I've been like self-care in this year?
Love that.
I found a thing on the internet, because that's where all good things come from, that said, remember when you dreamed of doing what you currently are. Remember,
Yeah, a friend sent me that as well.
remember when you dreamed of what you currently have.
Yeah.
And that sort of energizes me every day, and that I, for a very long time, wanted to do this, and for a very long time didn't. And now I am. And I got here late, and so I got to make up for lost time. So it is less a question of balance for me now, and more a question of marathon, not a sprint, but I still have to sprint.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of ground to cover and not a lot of time to do it. So I am not in a ideal balanced state right now, but that is on purpose. That is like, right now it's like, be humble, but let motherfuckers know. Like, go work.
Yes.
And so, will I relax every now and again? Sure. Red Dead Redemption 2 just came out, so that'll be a thing I have to make time for. But right now it's pedal to the metal and get what you can, when you can, while you can. It's not healthy. I will never say that's healthy, but that's where we are right now.
Yeah, I don't have the self-care problem. I'm very good at it. I think maybe related to having kids, like at a certain point after kids, you're like, oh, if I don't make time for myself, I'll die. So I'm very good at like closing the door and being like, I'm now watching the same Buffy episode that I've seen 1,000 times. Don't come in here. I have a bottle of Captain Morgan. And that's it. So I'm so good at that this year I was like, let's push ourselves a little more to be a little less likely to close the door and get your bottle of Captain. Yeah, like now I'm like, I kind of feel like this is the time you've mastered self-care, and I don't even think it's that healthy of a self-care, so let's do something.
Listen, I want a prescription of Buffy and Captain Morgan. That is a hot combo.
Hush in the count, I'm the captain. There's no downside.
Works every time.
I don't do self-care. I'm writing all the time. I'm always be writing guy. I'm always be writing guy.
You only got one job. What's the matter with you, Geoffrey?
I don't know what you got.
You don't need 4 jobs, Geoffrey.
You're joking, but my folks are from Barbados, so that might be part of it.
Oh no, yes, for sure.
Honestly, I went through such a long period of time where I wasn't getting to do what I want to do. And that thing that I guess people are sending around, I have my friend and my wife to say when I get into those stress points, dude, remember what you were doing sitting on that floor in that shitty apartment? Remember what you said you were going to be, where you were going to be? And it's like, you know what? I don't really need you to say that to me. I'm glad you said it when you're dead. But people ask me how can you be on Twitter as much as you are and then turn out all this stuff? And I'm like, always be writing, always be writing. It sucks. I don't recommend it. I need to take a break at some point soon. But I've never taken a vacation in 15 years. Since the door opened, I hit my feet hit the floor and they have not come up.
Jeff, you better rest so I'm not back here in a year talking about like, man, if only Jeff had just taken a knee and breathed a little.
No, because I'll be dead one day. And I got a lot of fucking stories to tell.
Don't rush it. Okay.
Just not tomorrow.
Don't be like me. Don't be like me. It's hard.
I do want to take the time to open it up to the audience if you guys have any questions that you want to ask our amazing panel. I see you taking notes, that's why
I'm definitely got a question. First of all, before I ask my question, just want to thank you guys for sharing your stories, for an aspiring film producer who wants to, and I feel kind of funny saying this, but I'll go ahead and say it, wants to specialize in creating comic book properties, superheroes, basically.
You feel funny saying that?
You're in the
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I just know it's being recorded. So that's the thing, but anyway, what type of advice, because again, like I want to produce superhero films, that's my ultimate ambition. It's always been something I've been really strongly passionate about ever since I saw the first 1989 Batman movie.
Wow.
I was 2 years old at the time and didn't cry, stayed up.
So your folks let you see that movie at 2?
Yes, and I stayed up for 70% of the movie.
Holy shit.
And I saw it in theaters.
Yeah.
So that kind of started the passion for the superhero genre. So I guess my question is like, what type of advice for somebody that's trying to get into the industry and, go that route?
I would say, if you're talking about features,
Yes, features.
and you want to produce them,
Mm-hmm.
I would say start small. I would say start with a movie concept that is small enough for you to do on a relatively small budget, that is infinitely expandable. If you think about the first Matrix movie, which is not a small movie, but by comparison to those freaking sequels, it's a freaking indie movie made in somebody's basement. But had they never made any sequels, that movie stands perfectly fine on its own, which is all you really ever promised, right?
Yeah.
That first movie. So if you're dreaming of empire, dream of a town first, right? Dream of a town you can put a wall around and get some fighters on the wall, and make sure people get to grow up, get a little generation underneath you. Don't go for the whole country at one time, because almost nobody ever survives that, unless you're actually Alexander the Great. And you might be, but most of us aren't. So I would say pace yourself.
Yeah, and remember that the ones that we love are the ones that are character pieces first, right? You know, and character is, not to say free, but cheap as fuck.
Yeah.
You know, so if you look at a movie like Slight, if you've seen J.D. Dillard's Slight, which is about some LA street magician who also happens to fucking be able to actually do magic thanks to some weird biotech thing he did in his basement. Cost him like 85 cents to make that movie.
Right.
But it's about a guy and the lengths to which he's willing to go to provide for his family. So the point where he's going to mutilate himself to do magic. And it's a strong character story. It lives on the page. You know, when you get really good actors and you can make a movie like that for next to nothing, and then it can travel for you, it can help show that you understand what makes characters like this tick. Then you get to graduate to a certain degree, and then they start letting you make these movies the ones that you love. Like, because when we love them, it's not because of, oh, look what they did. It's look who's in it. Look what we love. Look why we love Winter Soldier more than we love Justice League. You know, and there's a reason why. It's not because one's better written than the other.
There's a reason why? There's a reason why?
I know where it's coming from, though.
But the first reason is that you believe in Captain America.
Yes.
In the way that you don't believe in anybody that's on a DC movie screen. And that's because it's character. And yes, Jeff, there's 1,000 reasons why.
That's a whole week-long seminar.
But the first reason is that reason.
I think the other thing is not being afraid to say the thing that you want. Like the way we're recording now and you were like, I feel weird saying it. And to me, it's like, you have to start saying it every day. You have to start saying it to people that you meet. The first thing I got paid to write was for Paste Magazine, a film review, which I was paid $20 for. And I went crazy because I had a check of like money, and you grow up being told like you can't really get paid for writing. And I was like, nope, look, see, $20. And I told everybody I was a writer. And I had like a small daycare that I ran, where it was really just like an excuse for me to stay home with my kids and like watch a couple of other people's kids. I was really responsible though, I was okay. I'm making $100 a month as a writer, but I'm saying I'm a writer because I was like, I'm a fucking writer. And I went to school to be a writer, and now I'm a writer. So to me, just getting in the habit of saying the thing that you want to be and saying it and not being like, this sounds crazy, this sounds weird. Like, no, this is what it is, I'm going to do it, I'm working on it now.
Absolutely.
So.
Thank you.
Guys, we do have to wrap up, but before we go,
Thank you, guys.
I want to give everybody on the panel a chance to, shout out your Twitter handles and where people find you, next projects, and also if you could, just very briefly, a hope you have for the industry in the near future, something you'd like to see happen or change or be better.
Akela Cooper. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Akela Cooper. Currently, I have, I think, a second episode. I don't know if I can say that now, Jeff, but I just did.
You're allowed to say, but not what the episode is.
Fine. I have a second episode of Black Panther's Quest.
Yes!
That will be here at some point. Thanks to this little man at the end of the table. And hope for the business is always like just get better. I would like to see more people of color and more basically non-white cisgendered men rise through the ranks so that we can give each other the opportunities that they're not necessarily giving us. Because this is, as we've all talked about, it's a lot of nepotism, it's a lot of I'm gonna hire my friends, and then the people who are hiring their friends are usually white guys. Like I was in a position, I was a showrunner earlier this year, I hired two of my friends, one happened to be a woman of Asian descent, and another one was a black woman. That is how it works, but I also made sure that we brought in, a young staff writer of color that I had not met before. And so, yeah, it's we need to be given the opportunity to spread the love, essentially, in this business.
I am at Marc Bernardin, Marc with a C, Bernardin on Twitter and Instagram. And I hope and long to no longer be the one black guy in a room.
Oh, Christ.
Preach.
Which I have been in every job I've ever had, ever.
God.
So I am now in a room with a black woman, which is lovely, and she's fantastic, and I've never felt like this before. Simply just to not have to explain everything. But yeah, just the sense that you do not have to defend or rep for or stand for an entire classification of people. It'd be nice to have more shoulders to spread that upon, but that's just me.
Shannon M. Houston. I think that's my Twitter, right? My Instagram is Shannon M. Houston Official. Just more. I want to see more of us and more like weirder, creepier, uncomfortable stories on the screen. All those things that make people uncomfortable that you're afraid to say out loud. I definitely want to see more of that, particularly from our black creatives.
Geoffreythorne.com. GeoffreyThorne. Yes, ridiculous parents, not at all. .com. Everything you want to find out about me is right there on the front page. It clicks through to everything. So.
Grindr.
Yep.
There's none of that. This is the shielding. It's all that. I don't know what y'all are doing. I'm locked the fuck down.
Well, guys, I've been Joelle Monique. This is the first episode of Getting Out. Thank you so much for being part of the audience. You'll be able to find Getting Out on everywhere you can find podcasts very soon. Follow me at Joelle Monique, JoelleMonique, and you'll have all the details. Thanks so much, guys. Enjoy the rest of your time.
Woohoo! Thank you so much.